I think the biggest mistake you can make is to think that your people don't get that change is going to happen. To say to them, oh, nothing's going to change. Don't worry. Everything's going to be all right. It's just one of the other things I always tell these women is to use their voice, because their voice needs to be heard. And it was really about giving them the confidence to break through and want my job, not the job of the person reporting to the person that reported to me, but my job.
Welcome to the first episode of our first re-release of our podcast, Ambition Unleashed. Today, I'm joined by Julia Robertson, former Group CEO of Impellum and Headfirst Global, now Chairman, NED and Advisor across multiple organisations. Over a 25-year career, she has led complex organisations through growth, through transition and through cultural change, building high-trust teams while scaling businesses internationally. Julia, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm delighted you're our first guest. So I have some probing questions around ambition, career, your thoughts on influence in the world, and one key question to ask at the end that we will ask every person that comes onto our podcast. It's an insight to share. If you don't mind, I'd love to ask about your early career and your idea of ambition and what you believed about power and who had it and how it works and how you unleashed yours.
That's a big question for someone like me, because I think one of the things I look back on is I never really had a plan. And whereas, yes, I've been hugely ambitious over time, I didn't set out with that burning ambition. It kind of found me. And in fact, the start of my career in this big world of recruitment that I ended up running a global company in just happened really by accident. And it happened because I was doing a perfectly nice job for a perfectly nice company. And one day I was walking across Finsbury Square in the city of London and reading a copy of the Evening Standard. And I saw this job advert which said, interviewers, £40 a week. And I thought, that's an absolute fortune. Now, forgive me, it wasn't £40 a week, it was £100 a week. So I thought, that's an absolute fortune. I've got to go and get that. So I think I was on something teeny tiny back then, which I'm giving away a little bit about my age here. So I went for the interview and I got the job. And then I found right back then the first scam in recruitment history, which it wasn't £100 a week, it was £40 a week plus commission. Anyway, that was a big lesson, but it was still more than I was earning. And so I took the job. And then when I went to resign from the very nice job I had for a nice girl like me, my then boss said to me, you can't do that. You can't go into recruitment. That's not for someone like you with your capability, and so on and so forth. And being the stubborn person that I am, I did do it. And you know what? Actually, and I've talked about this before in other chats, that was the thing that spurred me on all the time to prove that I was right, to take that leap into something that others wouldn't have thought was right for me. And that little job advert, I guess, was the start of where I got to today.
I love that. This key unlocker. Tell me I can't do something and it's not right for me and I've got to prove you wrong.
And I've spent 40 years proving it.
I love that. I love that. And given where it took you, because to me, and when we first met, and you still do, and you always will occur to me as this extremely powerful woman and a really powerful female leader. And I've got no doubt that that journey has taken you there. And I'm really delighted that you shared that initial story about where that started. But on that journey of leadership, I guess you change, don't you? And I think that's the first step of change, when someone tells you, what's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this, doing that kind of job? And that's an initial step towards change and a perspective and a mindset long term. And I guess leadership really does change a person and it strengthens things within them. I do wonder, though, what element has it strengthened within you? And has there been, like, there's always a shadow side or a cost-benefit analysis if you've had to sit with it. What would you say? Look, this is what I know as a leader, and this is what it's made me into.
Well, look, it's been a long and winding road, this journey of mine. And anyone listening who I didn't exercise good leadership skills on back in the day, I wholeheartedly apologize, because I have learned a lot on the way. You don't start these things with a fully formed sense of where you're going and how to do it, and you learn on the job, as you know. But there were some defining moments for me on this journey, in the recruitment sector, in the staffing sector, and as a leader. And they came from the really early experiences I had in that first job I got, walking across Finsbury Square reading Evening Standard. And I can absolutely say that I made a promise to myself, because it was a really hard experience. I was really young. I wasn't even 20, and I became a manager of 6, 10 people at that young age, because everybody left before they could get to that stage, and this staff turnover was so huge. So I found myself in this position, and I dug in because I promised myself that I would use everything I was learning about how not to do it differently when I had the chance to do it. And it was such an experience. I was physically sick every day I went to work. It was so stressful that I promised myself, if I ever had the opportunity to run my own business, if I ever had the opportunity to shape the recruitment industry, I would do it my way. I think there's a song in that. Um, and so that again was that's where it came from, because I was stubborn. I wanted to prove myself right, and I was going to learn from the bad experience and find a way to do it differently. Um, and that is what I think I've done along the way. I've had some wonderful bosses and mentors, and I've learned something from each of them, and then put that together into the me that is today, I guess.
It's interesting, isn't it? The way that there's a commitment to self that actually translates into the commitment to other people that I watched when I had the opportunity to work with Impelling. And I really saw that show up, and you be that beacon of everything that leadership should be. And I'm saying we should, because there is no way that things should be. We know that because of our work, right? But we kind of, when people are in positions of power, we know there's a kind of a,
Yeah, and when I was thinking about what you might ask and what you might say, and what my sort of one-liner would be on that, it was really that culture starts at the top of an organisation, and I became really aware of that when I worked for Ginny Tate at Tate Appointments before we sold the company to what the business is now in Pelham, and she made me crystal clear on the importance of that. And I became really aware that people watch how you behave every moment of the day. So they might listen to what you say and listen to what you ask them to do, but they watch you to make sure that you're consistently doing it. And that's when you go center stage and you can't turn off. And that's all the time as a leader. So that was a lesson I learned sort of halfway through my 40 years.
no, I think it's all in the best time. It's that authenticity piece, though. That's congruence with what you say and what you do. I think it's massively important within leadership, because you're the role model for the rest of the
I,
organization. And I think,
yeah, I think authenticity is everything to me. I I had a PA back in the day, Chrissy, who I worked with for many, many, many years, and she and I used to say, we have to be authentic, we have to be truthful, we have to do what we say we're going to do, because we're not smart enough to make it up and be different people all the time. It's just the way we are. So actually, when you look at me, people, and say, is that really what you think? Yes, it's really what I think, because it's much simpler that way round. But I also think that was a big lesson for me about creating the culture of trust that I wanted to do. That was a cornerstone for the vision of Impelling, which was the business I led for over 20 years, to be the world's most trusted. And that doesn't come easily. It requires all types of things happening to make that happen to a business. We all know culture eats strategy for breakfast, but culture takes a long time to create, and it has to be done with small things happening all of the time. And to create trust, you have to be believed by your people. You have to be on best behavior all the time. and share with people all the time where you're going and what part they can play, and do that. I think sometimes people might think I overshared where we were going and how it was and so on and so forth. But actually, that to me was that transparency gives people the permission to own their part of it without being told what to do. And that makes for a better business. You can make decisions more quickly. It reduces anxiety. It means that people just know where they are. And all the time people stop worrying about what I'm thinking is time that they can spend doing what we need them to do. So,
And I love that
yeah.
journey you described to create the culture. But once that culture is created, if we step back from it and the lessons behind it and the learnings from it, what do you think the first sort of signals are that the culture is shifting for better or worse? What did you notice? What did you notice in the movement for that most trusted that confirmed things were moving in the right direction?
Well, it, what did I notice? I guess, what did I notice? What did I see? And what did I hear? Because you kind of, it's all over the place. And it was interesting, when we were selling the company a couple of years ago, and we were talking about the culture to head first who were acquiring us. And I said, look, go and talk to people and see what words they use to describe the business. And I'll be amazed if these words don't come up: trust, virtuoso, promises, and so on and so forth. These, as you know, because you work with us, these were the things that were integral to the culture that we were creating. But what I noticed is that people were using that language and acting in that way, even when I wasn't looking. I mean, because you always get people that use the corporate speak if they think it's corporate speak when the boss is around. But I saw real evidence of this happening in meetings, not just that I attended, but meetings I heard about, in things that I read. I saw it in customer feedback, in when the ways people described interacting with us, in what people said about their colleagues, just all over. You could just hear it, see it, and touch it. And you could also tell when someone didn't get it or couldn't get it. When we might have made a recruitment mistake once or twice, which is a recruitment company shouldn't do, but we might have hired someone for a set of skills that were really impressive, or a set of capabilities that we wanted to bring in because we were really excited about what they had that we didn't have. But if they didn't have that cultural alignment, you could see how things could blow up really quickly. And that really led to us deciding that no, we need to develop our people who got who we were and how we did things to have those skills and capabilities, rather than try and import those from another organization that believed in different things. Doesn't mean they were wrong. It just means they weren't like us.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that is the tone that leadership really does set. And as leadership changes, as you watch your organizations and leadership shifts and moves, what do you think tends to get lost there? So if you've got a culture that you've got established and you've got ways of working and all the rest of it, what do you think? What do you observe, given your experience and now your outside perspective, as things that could just be at risk there?
You can see when trust isn't there. You can. That's the thing that stands out for me. You can see it in how people frame questions, in the things that they talk about, in that sort of dissonance, if you like, between what people say and what people do. And I think that's when a culture shifts. When there's a leadership change, or a big event, or a customer loss, or big things, how leaders react to that impacts people down the organization. And if you think that people don't notice these small things, you are so wrong. they really do, and they get it really quickly. So I've been fortunate enough to take on some NED roles, as you spoke about, and some chairman roles, and just listening to the board conversations and then seeing the board reports and then observing what happens in the business has just been so informative. And it's been helpful to me. I'm not sure my new colleagues think it, that I can use my executive skills to quickly hone in on where we might have issues to solve. And they generally come back to trust, alignment, where things lack clarity, people just aren't clear what you want of them anymore, and that creates poor performance and staff turnover and all of those things.
On that note, if you could have one golden rule around leaving change without eroding that trust or culture, what would it be? If you could rewrite the rule book, what would be this is the one thing?
Transparency. Transparency. Sometimes you can't share everything, of course. When you're on boards or you're a public company or whatever, sometimes there's things happening that you can't share. But you can't leave people guessing about the things that you can't share. You have to say, I can't tell you that, but what I can tell you is this, and this is your part in it. And I think that's so important. And I've led lots of change through acquisitions, disposals, the recent integration of Impellerman Head First. And so lots of change going on. And I think the biggest mistake you can make is to think that your people don't get that change is going to happen. To say to them, oh, nothing's going to change. Don't worry. Everything's going to be all right. Just keep smiling. They're smart. We have smart people working for us, and you've got to give them the context for the change that's likely to happen, and reduce their anxiety as much as you can. And if you just say, I can't tell you that, but I can tell you this, and this is what I see as the next steps, and this is your part. That does so much to settle people down. And people also know that people in jobs like the ones I've had and have now have to do difficult things. We have to do difficult things, and nice people can do difficult things. We just do them nicely. And there's something in that I really believe you do not have to be, I can't think what polite word I can use, but you know what I'm thinking, don't you? You don't have to be the archetypal boardroom dragon to be a really effective leader of change transformation, and you can do hard things. And one of the things I always tell people as they're growing up through the company, because I've been there, is this is going to be hard. Maybe someone's got to do a redundancy calculation or a performance conversation or whatever. This is going to be hard, but you can do it, and you can do it authentically as long as you look in the mirror tonight before you go to bed and say, I did it truthfully, I did it kindly, I did it in the way that I would wish it done to me. You can do hard things as long as you do them like that. And I empathize with people doing hard things because it's not nice, but we all have to do them.
It's very true. And many leaders have a playbook, don't they, about how to do hard things, and they process them. And what I heard you say was more important was empathy. And I've heard you speak with that. You put yourself in their shoes, know that you're going to be kind, know that they're going to walk away from it feeling valued and respected. And I wonder then, that strikes me, and we've spoken about this before. So I'd really like to get back into that conversation around the application and use of soft power within a business and how you would work that. So how would you describe it to people? Because we know it works for performance. We know that it works in organizations, but it's underestimated, I think.
It's hugely underestimated, and it's often associated with women as opposed to men as well. And I think I've used soft power throughout my career, and it's really hard sometimes not to be defensive about using soft power rather than the more typical male power or the traditional boardroom power. I don't know what word to best describe that without offending colleagues of any gender. But I do remember back in the day having male direct reports who underestimated me and my strength as well as my power. And someone once described me as having a iron fist in a velvet glove. And I'm not entirely sure that's a description I would use, but I think soft power is understanding the context first, not assuming anything, listening really hard, and then thinking how to get the best result for everyone involved. And sometimes that does require you to be authoritative and give absolute clear direction without any ambiguity. Other times it's collaborating for the right outcome. And you do have to pick the times you choose each one of those. But it's interesting now, I've moved on from Impelum, but I still stay in touch with a lot of the leaders who grew up with me and a lot of the female leaders that work with me. And I was with one of them yesterday, and Kelly, you might remember Kelly, and I know, and she's out and about doing all sorts of interesting things in her new career and new world. And she said, "Oh gosh, Julia," she said, "I go to places and I think Julia would never let us get away with that. She would have done much better than that." And that's a way of describing it as well, without wishing to come across as a matriarch. I I really cared about bringing people up to do the right thing, and that sometimes means having to give feedback to people you love that they're not going to like. Um, but again, doing it kindly and out of the right motivation is really important. And um, in my new role, I'm working with several companies in all sorts of different sectors. None of them in recruitment where I've come from. I think the people I'm working with are sort of waking up to that different way of working as well, and they might not have appreciated it to start with, but they're beginning to see how that can help them too. But it is about setting the context, setting the direction, influencing, but also knowing when to move into directing as well. Because with all due respect to consultants, if you're a CEO, you do have a job to get done as well, and you need to coach, you need to mentor, you need to guide, you need to develop, but you also need to move the business on at the pace you need to move it on to meet whoever your paymaster is, whether it's shareholders or whoever. So it's getting that balance right. And again, I think I've learned over time how to get that balance right. When's right to direct and when's right to influence. And I hope I don't feel the need to assert myself just to prove a point. I think I get there another way. But I think lots of leaders feel they have to be the one in the room that knows everything and has the final word. And I was probably there back in my career as well. I think one of the benefits of being really old and still working is you've done most of the things wrong that people around you, and you can talk about it with personal experience and storytelling, which is I often find most effective, so that the person knows that you've walked in their shoes and you genuinely want to help them to get somewhere else. So
What I want to really touch on, it's something that you built in my mind, is that there are levels of maturity within leadership and how we grow and how we learn and how we mature. Because I think one of the big things that strikes me about the way that you speak is that you are incredibly self-aware as a leader. And you speak about, I might not have been that self-aware back in the day, but I've definitely learned some lessons. And the lessons result in leadership maturity, I think. And now you're in that position that you're in, and you can see organisations from a broader vantage point. You can get in amongst them as well. What things are becoming clearer to you about leadership maturity in other places? What's the level of leadership maturity like out there in the world, Julia? What are you seeing out there?
variable, I would say. It is, but leadership is a really all-encompassing word, isn't it? And as I'm working with different CEOs, and I worked with lots of CEOs in Impellums. We had divisional CEOs in the different countries and so on and so forth, but they were all in one sector. And I'm now working with CEOs across a broader range of businesses, some publicly quoted, some private, some large, some small. You do have people in different stages of their maturity and development as a leader, and that's okay for the business where they are, hopefully. But I've always believed that leaders lead from a particular place within them, and that's okay too. And people aren't good at everything. You can't be. And that's the self-awareness piece, which you're kind enough to describe to me, that you have some leaders that lead from sales mentality and from customers, and the way they lead is to bring home the bacon and bring in the revenue, and everyone loves them for that, even if they don't do everything else, because they think, well, that keeps us safe. We revenue coming in, we've all got a job, so they lead from that. Other people lead from governance and finance. So people generally come from a CFO background into a leadership role, running a company, and you can see their real strength in that domain. Or people lead from people and culture. I lead from people and culture, but I've really learned hard how to do everything else, or decided when actually that's best with someone else. So I'm accountable for that, but I'm bringing this person in who complements my skill set. So the most effective leaders I work with are the ones who are really aware about really where they lead from, and have worked hard to fill the gaps, but don't pretend they walk on water and know everything. They're prepared to defer to their finance expert or their technology expert or their people expert. They're prepared to bring people on who know what they don't know. And I think I do that quite well now, even in my non-executive roles. I can see what the field of play is and what we've got and what we haven't got, what I need to do, and where we need to fill gaps. But one thing I would say there as well is you get more confident about doing that as you get more secure in yourself as a person as well as a leader. And one of my big self-reflections as I've been on the journey that I've been on and then come out of an executive job into what I'm doing now is it's much easier to be brave and bold when you're the most senior person, or you're not relying on something to pay your mortgage or feed your children or whatever, and you're not sure what the response to being brave and bold is going to be. So there's something in there that we need to think about, that with experience and a modicum of success comes freedom of thought and freedom of action, that you can be bold and say it how it is, because you've been through all those years of thinking, oh, I get fired for this, or well, what if that goes wrong, or what if we lose that customer, or whatever. So there is something there that I've been thinking about over the last few years, actually. How do you liberate people to be their best selves? And that's what we did at Impellum as much as we could in the context of an employee relationship through the Virtuoso program, that you were a key part of, where we did empower people to be authentic, to be brave, to be curious, to be innovative, all those wonderful qualities that we talk about. And we actually celebrated those things. But I'm still reflective of how much you can get people to act like that when they're constrained by potential for job insecurity. And let's face it, job insecurity is a big deal at the moment. It's a big deal for young people, especially, people in their 20s who, seeing very hard to get jobs and then seeing jobs being phased out. And I have real sympathy with the role of leadership in that environment, actually, to nurture those skills and capabilities that you want whilst keeping people feeling safe in an ever-changing world that you and I probably can't foresee. Well, I can't, but what is the world of work going to look like in 5 years' time, Gemma? I don't know. And I'm kind of glad that I'm not doing what I was doing before, because No, but seriously, it is when I listen, and I've only been out of that executive job for a year. When I listen to some of it now, I think, wow, what would I have done if I was still in that job now? It's really interesting reflection because the world is changing super fast.
And it's so volatile and changeable. And AI, I think, has created a lot of this shift, this change, the feeling of instability. The job market's changed massively because of AI. And I've seen many people setting up consultancies that recruit through using AI. And that really wasn't a thing when we were working together, was it?
Really wasn't a thing. I mean, it wasn't really a thing. I think been about 3 years, hasn't it? I remember I was at a family wedding, and someone had flown in from America who worked in tech, and he said to me, "Well, what do you think of Chat GPT?" And I went, "I don't know what you're talking about." And I think that was only 3 or 4 years ago. Gemma, seriously, maybe it was five. I don't know, but I really remember it, and I thought, "Oh, that sounds interesting." I went home and looked it up, but look at it now. It's extraordinary.
It's flying. And so I guess when you look at it, and if you're working with people who are in a similar boat, because I think there's just been an explosion of discovery in AI, but we still have organizations who want to adopt it, but they feel nervous about it, or leaders look at it in a strange old way. How do we get people to consider how they can benefit from it rather than be afraid of it, do you think, as we move forward?
I think I mean, it's the subject in every, or should be the subject in every boardroom. How are we dealing with this? But what I believe to be true, and I see evidence of it in the businesses I work with, and but also talking to other people. And I've also got the real privilege of working with a tech startup who are really in that space in AI. A great bunch of guys and girls from Manchester who have got this really innovative idea of working with companies in the field of AI, and I work with them, and I'm trying to help them into boardrooms and things like that. Um, so whilst it's on every boardroom agenda, or should be a board agenda, actually very few people who are in the boardroom have a first flipping clue about what to do with it and how to let it into their organization. Should it be top down? Should it be forced? Should it be bottom up? Should we have an innovation hub? Do we leave it to the young folk to bring it to us? What do we do? But the thing is, it is developing at such a speed of knots, and I'm really privileged to work with this company because it's part of my education now. It's extraordinary. That even thinking about it in the way that we would think about a change program is too late. And in one of the boards I work with, someone came in to do a presentation to us on a change project, on a transformation. And I would say a year ago, it would have been perfectly fine how she went about it. It really was. And it was ambitious, it was bold, it was well thought through, it had all the milestones, it had, all the project plans, everything that you would expect. But it was too analog. It was how we would have done things a year ago, not with the power of the tools that are here now and will have rapidly changed in 3 months' time. We'd have been too slow. So it's that interesting, Gemma, that we have to coach different type of almost awareness in people that was a really great piece of work, but too late. we got to do a completely different piece of work now that we don't even understand or know about. And how are we gonna do that?
And this is a conversation that gets me really excited because you have to put yourself in the future state and think about, can we even project ourselves that far?
And if we can't, how do we run businesses? It really does challenge those norms. But how do we run businesses? We do it the way we've always done it, by creating the space for people to be authentic and themselves, and to share their thinking and bring the best people together, and so on and so forth, and make it okay not to know something, and co-create and all those things. We're just doing it at the speed of knots now, or companies need to, whilst keeping the wheels on the car and driving down the motorway at, I was going to say 100 miles an hour, but I think 70 miles an hour speed limit, isn't it? But
I thought about it a little bit today because, when you mention leaders think you've got to have all the answers, because it's very, it's a bit of an ego blow, isn't it? If you can't answer a question as a leader. And if you're in a conventional mindset of, I am the font of all knowledge and that I must know everything, it's difficult. And AI has sort of shifted that dial somewhat because you can get all your answers from AI.
you can, yeah. Yeah, I see people doing it in the boards I'm on. I see them, if they don't know what's going on, I see them on their phone and they're looking for the AI answer.
Yeah, it's an immediate thing. But I think what was so valuable about what you said right at the very beginning of this is that leaders create the context for people to really thrive. And you spoke about the trust, the transparency, the communication, the encouragement, the empathy, the things that make us very human wrapped around all of this AI shift. And I do wonder whether the potential, for us is when we get into leadership is not to look to see how many tools we can use, but what is the context in which the tools are being used so that the future can emerge? Because you're right, it's emergent, isn't it?
It is. It's creating that environment where we can figure it out together, and it all comes together. Everything I think I've said comes together in that space about the soft power and the authenticity and the trust and helping people not be anxious and being clear and all of those things. I think those things are the constant. Behaving like that, even if the future is uncertain, those things I think are enduring in how to not just run a good company, but lead a good life, actually. And, going back to being one person, whether I'm at work or at home, I want to be a good person. And I hope that comes across. And some of the things I'm working on with my boards, I hope that penny's dropping with people, that you can be authentic and human and fun and trustworthy and be really effective.
I love that. What it speaks to is about being open to being, and I know it's an overused word, it's about being open to being vulnerable and being human, and that we are people just as well as we are leaders in our role.
We are. And I think, again, coming back to what I was talking about 5 or 10 minutes ago about developing that confidence over time, almost because you've had a long career and you've been there and done it, you get more confident and able to say, I don't know, or I screwed up, or help me with this because I don't understand it. It's much easier to do that when you've proved a lot of points over time. It's harder for some people ever to admit they don't know something, isn't it? I mean, we've all met leaders who can't do that. But the power of that vulnerability, I've seen be very effective. I don't think I use it as a ploy. I just am vulnerable. Often we all are. But I'm more comfortable in my vulnerability now, I guess.
So, with that wisdom, then, and I want to pull all the wisdom out that we can get, I wonder what message that senior people, and if I'm going to be really bold, senior women in organisations, what message do they need to hear really clearly that could encourage them to step into a place where they can embrace all of what you've outlined for really great leadership?
One of the things I'm really proud of is the women that I've worked with at Impel. I'm proud of the men too. But we, over time, and these would be names of women that I've seen women, young women, get married, have babies, return to work, deal with being a working mother, then maybe become a single mother. I've done all of those things, and the constant through all of that has been to encourage them to be that authentic self. Now, women, me included, we have imposter syndrome, and I don't actually know a female leader who doesn't. Maybe I'm sure they're out there somewhere, or maybe they haven't revealed themselves to me. But women have to deal with all of those conflicting things in their lives. And what I've said consistently to those women, who I'm so proud of, and still really connected to, people I've worked with for over 20 years, is it's really tough to be a career woman, a mother, a wife. It's hard to do all three of those things, and often something has to give. So just be really careful about what it is that you choose to give. I've got two daughters, both of whom are powerful and successful, and mothers of four, and running homes. And I just say, how did you do all that? I mean, I was better at work and my kids. I wasn't always so good at being a wife. And it's very hard to do all three. And I'm just in awe of that. And one of the other things I always tell these women is to use their voice, because their voice needs to be heard. And we had this incredible cohort of women leaders going through the organization. And it was really about giving them the confidence to break through and want my job, not the job of the person reporting to the person that reported to me, but my job. And to know that they could do that with all their frailties and with all their insecurities, because that's what makes them so damn good. Because they knew all that stuff and they still knocked it out of the park.
Oh, I've got little goosebumps with that, That was fantastic. Fantastic. Now we're almost at time, and I do have one final question for you. And I really appreciate the time you've taken with us today. It's been an absolute joy to speak to you. So this is a question we're going to ask everybody. In one sentence, and you might have already answered this, so forgive me if it feels like you're going to say the same thing again, but in one sentence, what must leadership become if we want a truly thriving world? The place you described right at the beginning of the conversation.
I think leadership needs to be human. So in this world of AI, which I recognise, which is going so fast, I think humanity, being human, being authentic, being clear, those things don't change. And that's the way I would look at it. Just be who you are, be true to yourself, and be true to the people that work for you.
Thank you so much, Julia Robertson. It has been a fantastic conversation, and we are delighted that you are our very first guest on the relaunch of our podcast. We wish you well in everything that you do in the future, and we do hope that we get an opportunity to speak to you again.
I hope so too. I'm flattered and honoured to being your first guest. It's been a joy, Gemma. Thank you.